The camera had been installed for theft, not for storytelling. That was the only reason Marcus Bellamy ever gave anyone who asked. And it was true, at least at the beginning. His restaurant, Bellamy's Table, sat on a street that had once been fashionable and now merely survived, the way old neighborhoods survive, by holding on to a handful of businesses that refused to leave. He had built it from nothing over 11 years, carefully, anxiously, with a spreadsheet open at all times in the back of his mind. For 3 weeks, small things had been going missing. A few pounds of unsold bread, trays of end-of-night vegetables that should have gone to the compost bin. A shift lead mentioned it in passing, and Marcus felt the particular cold drop in his stomach that comes from suspecting the people who work for you. He did not want to feel that. He felt it anyway. He installed a small camera above the rear door, angled toward the alley and the dumpsters, and told himself it was standard practice. The same thing he would tell his lawyer and his insurance agent if anyone asked. He watched the footage for 4 nights and saw nothing. On the 5th night at 11:47 p.m., a man appeared at the edge of the frame. He was perhaps 50, though the alley light made it hard to say for certain. He wore a canvas coat that had been mended more than once, and he moved toward the dumpster with a familiarity that told Marcus this was not the first time. Marcus watched him lift the lid, look inside, and pull out a bag of unsold bread that the kitchen had set beside the bin, not inside it. Precisely so it would not spoil before the morning donation pickup that never came reliably enough. The man did not rummage. He did not appear desperate in the way Marcus had braced himself to see. He simply took what was there, folded the bag closed with care, and left. Marcus felt something sharpen in his chest. Not fear exactly. Something closer to violation. This was his food, his loss, eroding by degrees in an alley he could not see from his office. He decided that on the man's next visit, he would call the police. The man returned 2 nights later, at almost the same hour. Marcus watched the live feed from his office with his phone already in his hand, his thumb hovering over the keypad, 3 digits typed and waiting. But something made him wait one more moment before he pressed call. He told himself later it was curiosity. He did not entirely believe that even as he told it to himself. The man did not leave the alley. Instead, he walked to the mouth of it, where the street opened onto a row of shuttered storefronts, and he crouched beside a group of children who had been waiting there, out of frame the whole time, sitting on flattened cardboard against the cold brick wall. Marcus counted 4 of them. The oldest looked perhaps 11. The youngest could not have been more than 5, and she was asleep against the shoulder of the boy beside her, who held himself very still so as not to wake her. The man knelt and opened the bag. He did not simply hand it over. He unwrapped the bread himself, broke it into pieces, and passed the pieces out one at a time, asking each child something Marcus could not hear but could read from the shape of it. A question. Something like, "Is this enough? Do you want more? Are you warm?" The oldest boy shook his head at something and gestured toward the sleeping girl. And the man carefully set aside a larger piece, wrapped it back in the bag, and tucked it into the boy's coat for later. Marcus put his phone down on the desk without pressing anything. He watched the following night as well, and the night after that. The pattern held. The man came for what had been set beside the dumpster, never what was inside it, and he took it always to the same corner. To what Marcus began to understand was not a random gathering of strangers, but something closer to a small, unofficial family that had assembled itself out of necessity in a city that had room for almost everyone except them. His name, Marcus would later learn, was Elijah Okafor. He had worked 18 years as a machinist before the plant closed, and the severance ran out faster than promised. And after that, there had been a slow unraveling he did not like to describe, and that Marcus, to his credit, did not press him to. What Elijah did instead was notice early on the children who slept near the loading docks 2 streets over, whose parents were barely holding on, whose hunger made itself invisible because visibility, in that part of the city, invited more trouble than help. He had nothing to give them at first. Then he noticed the bread beside the dumpster, and understood that here was something the city was going to waste that did not need to be wasted. He never asked Bellamy's table for permission, assuming the answer would be no, or that it would come with conditions that made the help conditional on his own humiliation. He preferred the quiet arrangement of taking what was already being thrown away and turning it into something that mattered. Marcus sat with this for 2 full days before he did anything. He was not, by his own accounting, a hard man, but he had built his sense of himself around fairness in a narrow way, the fairness of ledgers, of theft, as a fixed category that did not bend for circumstance. Watching Elijah kneel in that alley and break bread into 4 small pieces had cracked that narrowness open in a way he could not fully close back up. On the 3rd night, instead of calling the police, Marcus walked out the back door himself, into the cold, and found Elijah crouched by the dumpster with the bag already in his hand. Elijah went very still, the look of a man who has run through this exact scenario many times and never landed on an ending that goes well for him. Marcus asked how long this had been going on. Elijah, after a long pause, told him, 7 months. Since the weather turned the first time, Marcus asked about the children. Elijah did not want to say much at first, protective in the way people become when information can be used against the people they love before it can be used to help them. But something made him talk. He told Marcus about the boy who did the older sibling math instinctively, always checking the smallest one had enough before he considered himself. He told him about a mother 2 blocks over working 2 jobs and still coming up short, who did not know precisely where the extra bread came from and had stopped asking, because some questions felt too dangerous to answer honestly. Marcus did not say much in response. He went back inside, and the following night, instead of leaving bread beside the dumpster to be quietly taken, he had his kitchen staff pack it properly, in real containers, and he left it inside the door, unlocked, with a note that said only, "For Elijah, whenever you're ready." It was a small gesture, and Marcus knew it was small even as he did it, but it changed something structural. It moved the exchange from theft, real or perceived, into something that had a name he could live with. Over the following weeks, that small gesture grew the way small honest things sometimes do. Marcus began setting aside more than the excess bread. He started keeping a second pot of the evening soup, made properly, not scraped from the bottom of what remained. He asked his kitchen manager, quietly and without fanfare, to prepare 4 extra plates on nights when the restaurant was slow enough to absorb the cost without anyone. Upstairs, noticing on a spreadsheet, he met the children on a Sunday afternoon when the restaurant was closed, and Elijah, nervous, brought them by the front door instead of the alley for the first time. The oldest boy, whose name was Tobias, shook Marcus's hand with a formality that suggested someone, likely Elijah, had coached him carefully on how a boy should behave when meeting a man who owned something. The smallest girl, whose name was Nia, did not shake hands. She simply looked up at Marcus with the flat, assessing stare of a 4-year-old deciding whether an adult could be trusted, and then, apparently satisfied, asked him if the restaurant had ice cream, which it did not, and which Marcus resolved on the spot to correct. Marcus did not tell this story to anyone for a long time. He did not want it known as a kindness because he understood, with the particular clarity that comes from having almost called the police on a man doing something better than anything Marcus had done in years, that what Elijah had built in that alley out of nothing, over 7 cold months, with pieces of bread broken carefully in half so the smallest child always had enough, was not a story about Marcus's generosity at all. It was a story about a man who had lost almost everything and had used what remained of himself to make Sure, 4 children did not have to feel the particular cold of being forgotten by a city that had room for everyone except them. What Marcus eventually did tell people, when he told the story at all, was simpler than the truth deserved. He said that he had almost called the police on the best person he had ever met, and that the only thing that had stopped him was a moment of hesitation he still did not fully understand, and that he was grateful every day since. For that hesitation, Elijah still comes by most evenings. The bread is no longer taken from beside a dumpster. It is handed to him warm by name at the front door. Tobias helps carry it now on nights he does not have homework. Nia has decided, after careful deliberation, that Marcus is an acceptable adult, and she tells him this periodically, unprompted, as though it remains a decision she is still actively making. The camera above the back door still works. Marcus has never taken it down. He simply stopped needing it to watch for theft, because what it had shown him in the end was never that at all.